faster. I mean, Tom Aspinall still can't see. He's got a fucked up right eyeball still.
It's really bad, right?
The reality is he might not ever fight again. Like, who knows? Like, if he has surgery on his eye and it doesn't go well and he can't see out of the eye, apparently he's still fucked up in his right eye. There's some tendon damage or something. And, you know, eyes are so tricky, you never know. Unless you're a fucking complete psychopath like Michael Bisping, who fought 11 fights in the UFC blind in one eye, which is so crazy that he did that.
That's not me saying.
I did a podcast,
shit,
right? That's your buddy. I did his podcast.
That's my buddy, man. But he's so stupid, man.
What did he say? I did not see this.
Bro, let me put this dude, Josh, man. Josh gonna go up on. See, here's the problem. You know what? So Josh always talks to me about moving to Texas. Oh man, it's so nice in Texas. Problem with moving to Texas is you start believing in stuff that just.
The UFC is built on one massive lie that's destroying fighters' careers before they even step foot in that octagon. And if you believe the fantasy they're selling, you've already lost the fight before the bell rings. Listen to me carefully, because what I'm about to break down exposes the brutal reality that separates champions from casualties. The organization doesn't care about your dreams, your training montages, or your inspiring comeback story. They care about one thing: raw, unbridled violence and the fighters who can deliver it consistently. Every single day, hopeful athletes walk into that cage with starry eyes and positive attitudes, thinking hard work and determination will be enough. They're dead wrong. The moment you step into those lights carrying even a trace of that innocent hope, you're about to get a reality check that could end your career permanently.
True. It's just not true. Where did Josh Thompson hear that? You ever wonder why?
But, Daniel, did you see who ended up in the Epstein files?
Rogan, but that's not true.
Yes,
Rogan wasn't in. Rogan wasn't.
John
in
Jones. John Jones.
You're a liar.
John Jones was his favorite fighter.
Bro, you're a liar, bro.
No bullshit. Go type it in.
Swear on everything.
Swear on everything. You know what? I'll try to send it to police right now because you can search them yourselves. Yeah, that's John Jones' favorite fighter.
But here's where it gets absolutely wild. We're not just talking about regular competition anymore. Names are surfacing in the Epstein files, and that changes everything about how we view this entire sport. When someone's name appears in those notorious documents, it's not just gossip or tabloid drama. It introduces a profoundly disturbing dimension that forces you to look past the obvious promotional material and examine the darker, more scandalous forces operating behind the scenes. Who's really pulling the strings in this organization? What kind of power dynamics are we dealing with when these connections come to light? Because suddenly, all those business decisions, all those fight bookings, all those mysterious contract negotiations start looking very different. The UFC has always been about control, but now we're seeing glimpses of just how deep that control might go and what kind of people might be involved in making those decisions.
I was critical because I felt like, you know, he talked about it and then it just like kept on and kept on and kept on. And I felt like he should just kind of leave it alone and, you know, for a minute. And yeah, it sucks. And here's the thing is he kind of accused Sorgan of cheating. And I'm actually curious to hear your opinion because of his physical opponent of yours. I feel like the ability to poke someone in the eye from space, like that's kind of hard. And if you could be that accurate, why wouldn't you just punch him in their eye?
Now let's talk about something that's happening right in front of our faces, but nobody wants to acknowledge it. Eye pokes in the octagon aren't accidents. They're calculated weapons being used by fighters who know exactly what they're doing. We're talking about professional combatants whose precision and control should be absolute, yet somehow their fingers keep finding their opponent's eyes at the most convenient moments. This isn't accidental contact or bad luck, especially not at the highest levels of the UFC, where every movement carries championship consequences. A single deliberate foul can completely reshape a career, derailing years of preparation in an instant. And here's the kicker. If you can consistently deliver eye pokes that somehow aren't just poor technique, that's a unique skill that fundamentally undermines the integrity of competition itself. The real psychological warfare begins when opponents start anticipating these fouls, forcing them to fight defensively and completely disrupting their game plan. These accusations spread through the division, creating uncertainty and forging narratives that damage reputations permanently.
Moving so fast, right? I was more inclined to believe that it was an accident. Tom Aspinall doesn't believe it. He thinks without.
Here's what the UFC executives will never tell you about championship belts. They don't care about your injuries, your personal struggles, or your current situation. They only care if you can deliver profits and maintain that ultimate symbol of dominance through relentless action. The moment you can't answer that call, the instant you can't rise up when it matters most, they will absolutely create an interim title without hesitation. Your reign exists on borrowed time, and uncertainty is the enemy of championship longevity. People don't fight with the same intensity when nagging doubts creep into their minds about whether they're dealing with the real champion or just a placeholder. The organization has turned championship status into a revolving door, and fighters are starting to realize that loyalty means nothing when pay-per-view numbers start declining. They'll strip you, bypass you, or create new divisions just to keep the money flowing.
Cyril Gane poked him in the eye on purpose. I don't believe it. But regardless of that, right? On purpose, on accident, he's still suffering long-term damage from this. How long does the UFC wait, though? Hey, Josh was wrong. I don't think that ask has been made yet. If the UFC wanted to, they could just make an interim title fight between someone else while the champion waits. Tom Aspinall fought last year.
You hear those whispers getting louder, don't you? That growing frustration from fans asking why the UFC refuses to showcase their actual current title holders in meaningful fights. Here's the brutal reality nobody wants to admit. It's not about careful planning or strategic scheduling. It's about championship pressure breaking even the most elite competitors. You see figures like John Jones, whose reputation and dominance completely shaped their divisions. But now other top contenders are engaging in psychological warfare, terrified of risking perfect records or hard-earned reputations. The mental game has become more important than the physical preparation, and fighters are calculating risk versus reward instead of seeking out the toughest possible opponents. When champions start cherry-picking fights or finding reasons to avoid dangerous contenders, the entire competitive structure begins to collapse.
This injury, it's like, why can't we get these guys together? And that's one of the things the UFC has been so good at, is putting the best athletes together in order to fight, and they didn't do that. Hey, I just dropped in the chat. Damn it, I'm gonna text you guys. I'm gonna text you the email from Epstein.
Want to discuss the heavyweight division? Because this situation is absolutely insane. This division isn't just struggling, it's on life support, and I can prove it. The current rankings are a complete facade, carefully engineered to hide a massive systemic collapse in championship-level competition. We're not seeing the tactical evolution or sustained ferocity you expect from apex predators at the pinnacle of combat sports. Instead, it's static, predictable, and the consequences are hitting the UFC where it hurts most, their credibility and marketability. This isn't just about a few individuals at the top of the rankings. This represents a fundamental failure to produce compelling, high-stakes narratives that capture global attention. When the biggest, most formidable athletes on the planet cannot consistently deliver the raw excitement that drives pay-per-view sales, the entire business model starts crumbling. And here's what's really wild: the heavyweight division was supposed to be the crown jewel, the division that casual fans understood and got excited about.
It looked like they weren't ready to fight. They also looked like they just, they didn't look as skilled as we have seen fighters look recently. So what you really need is you need the best guys fighting to kind of wipe the bad performances out. Because guess
But when fighters deliver uninspired performances, what message does that send about their dedication to the sport and their pursuit of excellence? Every lackluster showing damages not just individual careers, but the entire perception of mixed martial arts as the ultimate test of human combat ability. Fans invest emotionally and financially in these events, expecting to witness history being made, and instead they're getting strategic point fighting and risk-averse game plans. The heavyweight division should showcase the most devastating power and finishing ability in the sport, but instead we're watching fighters coast through decisions and avoid exchanges that might actually excite the audience. This creates a downward spiral where less exciting fights generate lower pay-per-view buys, which leads to smaller purses, which makes fighters even more conservative in their approach.
But again, bro, he got beat. He's good. He's good, right? But he's lost fights. It's just not in a great place. Would you say that if you put Waldo Cortez Acosta in there with Cyril Gane or Tom Aspinall, he'd be competitive? Would you?
You're right. So he lost in August of 25 to Pavlovich, Pavlovich is ranked pretty high.
And Pavlovich got knocked out by Tom Aspinall.
Here's the lie they keep pushing that drives me absolutely crazy. The notion that top fighters and premier contenders are constantly battling each other is complete fiction marketed to casual viewers who won't investigate deeper. Look what happened to Curtis Blades when he faced Pavlovich. A skilled combatant with real promise got completely exposed, revealing every single flaw in his game. Then consider Tom Aspinall's interim title victory and what that really represents. This isn't subtle skill differences we're talking about. It's massive, undeniable gaps in talent level that create harsh lessons about what happens when you're not performing at your absolute peak. If you're not pushing past your limits in every single moment of preparation, you simply will not survive at this level. This isn't about just showing up and competing. It demands enduring unimaginable pressure and embracing the strategic challenges that come with championship-level competition.
He's competitive because he can move. Yeah. But Luis is the classic fan of fighting because everybody wants to write Cyril Gane off. And I don't know why.
Because he got choked by John too fast, that's why.
Yeah, but still, bro, you forget that he fought tooth and nail with Francis. You literally just sat up here right now and said the three best heavyweights in the world are John, Francis, and Tom Aspinall.
I do believe that to be the case, yes.
Cyril fought Francis Ngannou very well. Hey, a mistake cost Cyril Gane beating Francis Ngannou when he tried for the leg lock.
And get this, people are completely wrong about Cyril Gane following his recent performances. This isn't speculation or wishful thinking. This is undeniable UFC reality that exposes how quickly narratives can shift. Remember, he took Francis Ngannou, one of history's most terrifying heavyweights, to the absolute limit in a title fight that showcased technical brilliance against raw power. But one or two disappointing showings, and suddenly everyone wants to write him off completely. That's the harsh reality of heavyweight competition. Your reputation exists on a razor's edge, and fan perception can destroy years of carefully built credibility in a single evening. Gane represents everything technical about modern heavyweight fighting, but the division's current state makes it almost impossible for technical fighters to build sustained momentum when power punchers can end fights with single shots. I keep hearing people talk about Gable Stevenson's UFC transition like it's some guaranteed path to championship gold. And that kind of thinking reveals everything wrong with how we evaluate heavyweight talent. They're suggesting easy fights for Gable, implying we can just place him in preliminary bouts as soft preparation. But let me ask you something crucial. Do you honestly believe any fighter in the UFC's top 15 heavyweights feels championship pressure after just a few practice fights against carefully selected opponents? This unsophisticated approach leaves contenders completely vulnerable and totally unprepared for the psychological warfare that comes with elite-level competition. Olympic wrestling credentials mean nothing when you're facing someone who's spent years perfecting the art of hurting people in a cage. And the heavyweight division is littered with accomplished wrestlers who couldn't make the transition successfully. Who emerges victorious and who becomes another cautionary tale reveals everything about mental preparation and the ability to withstand unthinkable pressure. It exposes who possesses the fighting mentality to endure savage punishment, and who maintains the resolute mental strength to climb that brutal, unforgiving ladder to championship status. The myth of being adequate or just good enough is complete fiction designed for people who don't understand elite competition. Success at the highest levels isn't about being capable. It's about performing at a level that completely obliterates good enough. It involves facing championship pressure and the cruel reality of competing in the world's most unforgiving arena, where single mistakes can end careers permanently. You either develop the pure, unwavering resolve to thrive in that brutal environment, overcoming every obstacle and satisfying every requirement for greatness, or you become another statistic forgotten by history. So here's what we're really looking at. The UFC has created a system that chews up hopeful fighters while protecting established names. The heavyweight division is experiencing a talent crisis that threatens its marketability. And behind the scenes, there are power dynamics and connections that should concern every fan of the sport. This isn't just about individual fights anymore. It's about the future of mixed martial arts and whether the organization can maintain its credibility while dealing with these systemic problems. What do you think happens next? Does the heavyweight division recover? Or are we watching the slow collapse of what was once the most exciting division in combat sports? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, smash that like button if this breakdown opened your eyes to what's really happening, and subscribe because the situation is about to get even more intense. I'll see you in the next one. But wait, because what I just explained barely scratches the surface of this rabbit hole. You want to know what's really happening behind those closed doors? Let me tell you about the financial manipulation that's destroying the sport from the inside out. The UFC's parent company, Endeavor, has turned fighter contracts into modern-day indentured servitude agreements that would make your head spin. These aren't just standard employment contracts. They're carefully crafted legal documents designed to extract maximum value from human beings while providing minimal compensation and zero long-term security. When fighters sign these deals, they're essentially selling their souls for the chance to maybe, possibly, earn life-changing money if they can survive long enough and avoid career-ending injuries. Here's the part that'll blow your mind. The average UFC fighter makes less than a high school teacher, yet they're risking permanent brain damage every single time they step into that octagon. Meanwhile, the organization is generating hundreds of millions in revenue from their blood, sweat, and sacrifice. Dana White talks about fighter pay like it's some generous gift he's bestowing upon grateful athletes, but the numbers tell a completely different story. In boxing, fighters routinely receive 50% or more of the event revenue. In the UFC, most fighters are lucky to see 5% of what their fights actually generate. This isn't just unfair, it's exploitation on an industrial scale that's forcing talented athletes to take unnecessary risks just to pay their bills. And speaking of Dana White, let's address the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. This man has built an empire on the backs of fighters while simultaneously destroying their ability to organize or demand fair treatment. Every time fighters attempt to unionize or speak out about working conditions, mysterious things start happening to their careers. Suddenly they're getting matched against killers, their marketing support disappears, or they find themselves released for performance issues despite having winning records. The psychological intimidation tactics are so sophisticated that most fighters are terrified to speak publicly about what they're experiencing. They know that crossing the organization means career suicide, so they smile for the cameras while privately struggling with financial stress and health concerns. But here's where it gets absolutely diabolical. The UFC has weaponized social media and fan loyalty to turn supporters against fighters who dare to speak out. They've created this cult-like mentality where questioning the organization makes you a hater or someone who doesn't understand the business. Fans attack fighters for asking for fair pay, calling them ungrateful or greedy, not realizing they're being manipulated into supporting a system that's destroying the sport they claim to love. It's psychological warfare at the highest level, using passionate fans as unwitting soldiers in a campaign to suppress fighter rights and maintain the status quo. Now let's talk about something that'll make you question everything you think you know about fight outcomes. The judging in this sport isn't just inconsistent, it's potentially compromised in ways that would shock you. We're dealing with judges who have financial relationships with promoters, referees who make split-second decisions that can swing millions of dollars in betting revenue, and a scoring system so subjective that identical performances can receive completely different results depending on who's working the event. When you have that much money flowing through underground betting markets and offshore gambling operations, the temptation for corruption becomes overwhelming. I'm not saying every fight is fixed, but the infrastructure exists for manipulation on a scale that would dwarf any scandal in traditional sports. Think about it in boxing. Questionable decisions generate outrage and investigations. In the UFC, they're just accepted as part of the game. Fighters know they need to win decisively because leaving it in the judges' hands is playing Russian roulette with their careers. But what happens when a decisive victory threatens the wrong financial interests? What happens when an upset would cost certain people millions of dollars? The referee has the power to stop fights early, ignore fouls, or allow illegal tactics to continue, and there's virtually no accountability for these decisions. Here's something that'll keep you up at night. The drug testing program that's supposed to ensure fair competition is riddled with loopholes big enough to drive a truck through. USADA testing sounds impressive until you realize how easy it is to game the system if you have the right connections and enough money. Designer steroids that don't show up on standard tests, microdosing protocols that clear the system in hours, and therapeutic use exemptions that allow legal performance enhancement for medical conditions that mysteriously develop right before training camps begin. The fighters who get caught are usually the ones who can't afford the sophisticated doping programs that elite athletes use. Meanwhile, certain fighters seem to possess superhuman cardio, recovery abilities, and power that defies natural human limitations, yet they never seem to have testing issues. It's not because they're clean, it's because they're playing by different rules. The testing program creates the illusion of fairness while actually protecting the biggest stars and revenue generators. When your entire business model depends on larger-than-life personalities delivering impossible performances, you can't afford to have your biggest draws testing positive for banned substances. So the system is designed to catch enough small fish to maintain credibility while the sharks swim free. But wait, it gets worse. The long-term health consequences that fighters are facing are being systematically covered up and downplayed by the organization. We're talking about chronic traumatic encephalopathy, permanent joint damage, hormone disruption, and neurological problems that won't fully manifest until these athletes are in their 40s and 50s. The UFC has teams of lawyers and doctors whose job is to minimize liability and create plausible deniability when former fighters start experiencing serious health issues. They've structured contracts to limit their responsibility for long-term medical care, leaving broken warriors to fend for themselves once their earning potential expires. The research on brain trauma in combat sports is absolutely terrifying, yet the UFC continues to promote the idea that mixed martial arts is somehow safer than boxing, because fights can end in submissions. That's complete nonsense designed to ease the consciences of fans who don't want to confront the reality of what they're watching. Every single fighter who competes regularly is accumulating brain damage, period. The only question is how much damage they can absorb before it starts affecting their quality of life permanently. And the most heartbreaking part? Many fighters know this but continue competing because they have no other viable options for earning a living. Let me hit you with something that'll change how you view every single fight card. The matchmaking process isn't about finding the best competitors or creating the most exciting fights. It's about managing narratives and protecting investments. When the UFC wants to build up a prospect, they feed them carefully selected opponents who look dangerous on paper but have specific vulnerabilities that favor the chosen fighter. When they want to get rid of someone, they book them against stylistic nightmares or fighters who are desperate for a big win. It's not competition in any honest sense. It's choreographed career manipulation disguised as sport. The most insidious part is how they use this system to punish fighters who don't play ball. Refuse to take a fight on short notice. Suddenly you're facing murderers row in your next 3 bookings. Complain about pay publicly. Get ready for a year of fighting killers while your contemporaries get softball matchups. The message is clear: conform or get destroyed. This creates an environment where fighters become afraid to advocate for themselves, knowing that any resistance will be met with career-threatening retaliation. It's psychological control through fear, and it's incredibly effective at maintaining the power structure.